everyone, and welcome. We're diving into organizational transformation today.
Yeah, we're going to try to unpack some pretty insightful stuff.
We're looking at this Unit 2 transformation process.pdf.
Like a crash course, really.
A little sneak peek into how the experts think about organizational change.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, it turns out that changing a company is hard.
You think?
Most of the time, it fails, actually. Like, a lot.
Yeah.
A 2023 Deloitte survey said that 66% of these big change efforts totally tank.
66%. That's most of them.
Wild, right?
And here's the thing. It's not like companies aren't trying.
Exactly.
Over 90% are investing in some kind of big-time transformation.
It's like everyone knows the odds are stacked against them, but they still go for it.
It's true. So the question is why? Why is it so hard to pull off?
It really is the million-dollar question. And it's
Right.
something businesses of all shapes and sizes are wrestling with.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter the industry.
It's everywhere.
Across the board. Now, this Unit 2 document we've got, it tries to shed some light on this.
Okay, good. Because I need some light on this.
It digs into a bunch of these popular frameworks for navigating change. You know, it mentions those big names, Lewin,
Okay.
Beer,
Here.
Cotter, and a bunch more.
So we're talking about the all-stars of change management here. Before we get too deep in the weeds, can you give us a sense of what they all agree on?
Sure. One thing you see over and over again is the need for structure. You can't just dive in head first.
Like you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These frameworks, they're the blueprints for change.
Okay, so they give you the steps, they tell you what to watch out for.
Yeah. And while they've each got their quirks, they do share some DNA, some core principles.
Hit me with those core
Well,
principles.
first off, communication is huge EE.
Okay, makes sense.
You got to be crystal clear about what's changing, why it's changing, and what it means for everyone involved.
And not just once. Right.
No way. This has to be constant.
Got to keep the dialogue open throughout the whole shebang.
The whole shebang, yeah.
Yeah.
Another big one, stakeholder involvement.
Oh, right. You can't just spring a big change on people.
Exactly. Get them in on the ground floor.
Listen to what they have to say, let them be a part of it.
All of that.
That makes sense. If you want people to embrace change, they can't feel like it's being forced down their throats.
100%. And lastly, all these frameworks, they're big on planning.
So no winging it.
Absolutely not. This is about roadmaps and milestones. You got to know where you're going and how you'll get there.
Okay, so these frameworks are basically our GPS for navigating this crazy road of organizational change. But you've mentioned some big names, Lewin, Beer, Cotter. How do their approaches actually differ?
Great question, and we'll definitely break that down more in a bit.
Okay.
But just off the bat, it's good to remember that many of these guys were thinking about a more top-down kind of approach.
You mean where the folks at the top call the shots and everyone else gets in line?
That's the one,
Yeah. And honestly, that's how it used to be in a lot of places, but things are changing.
for sure. And that old way,
Yeah.
it's not always the best fit for today's world, you know.
Things move so fast now.
You said it. So, are those traditional models obsolete? I don't know if I'd go that far.
They still have their place.
But you got to understand their limitations
Okay.
and be open to tweaking them. These organizations today are just so much more complex and everything's moving a mile a minute.
Speaking of a certain model, it seems like our Unit 2 document has a favorite.
Oh, yeah.
It really seems to like Cotter's 8-step model
Interesting.
for leading change specifically.
Well, that one's definitely a classic for a reason.
It's practically legendary in the world of organizational change.
Yeah, Cotter's model's got decades of research backing it up.
Wow.
And it just gives you this really clear, actionable framework.
So how does it work?
So you've got these 8 steps, 8 stages of transformation, if you will.
Okay.
They act as a roadmap to help leaders navigate this whole messy process of change.
I like it. Give me the SparkNotes version. What are the steps?
Right. So you've got these 8 stages. Think of them like, I don't know, checkpoints on your transformation journey.
Okay, I like that. Checkpoints.
And they're designed to guide leaders through this whole process. But there's a catechivouch. Cotter actually has 2 versions of this model.
2 versions. Okay, so which one are we talking about here?
Well, the Unit 2 document, it seems to focus on what's known as the classic 8-step model.
Okay, classic. So does that mean it's outdated?
Not necessarily. It's just that, the business world's changed a lot since Cotter first came up with this model.
That's for sure. It's like comparing a Model T to a Tesla these days.
Yeah, exactly. And Cotter recognized that. So he came up with this other version, what he calls the dynamic model.
Oh, I see. So the classic one's for, like, those slower-paced, predictable environments.
Right. It's like that well-planned road trip. You've got your route mapped out, you've booked your hotels, you know exactly when and where you're stopping for gas.
Smooth sailing, hopefully.
Exactly. But the dynamic model, that's more like, navigating a jungle gym. You're constantly adjusting, figuring out the best path forward, maybe even changing direction altogether.
So much more like the real world, right?
Exactly. Now, here's the thing. Both versions use those same 8 steps, but how you approach them, that's where the difference lies.
Got it. So the classic model is more like climbing a ladder one step at a time.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the dynamic model is more like, well, a jungle gym. You can climb up, down, sideways, whatever works.
Precisely. It's all about being flexible and adapting on the fly.
Okay, I'm with you. But before we go any further, let's rewind a bit. What exactly are those 8 steps?
Oh, right, of course. So the first step, got to establish a sense of regency. This is all about getting people fired up about the change.
Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Exactly. You got to help people see why the status quo just won't cut it anymore, why this change is essential.
Okay, makes sense. So you've got everyone convinced that change is necessary. What's next?
Well, you don't want to go it alone, right? You need a team.
Right.
Cotter calls it a guiding coalition. It's a group of influential people who are all on board with the change, and they're going to champion it, bring others along.
Gotcha. You're a team of change makers.
Exactly. And then comes step 3, crafting a vision.
Ah, the big picture stuff.
Right. This is where you would paint a picture of what the future could look like after the change. It's got to be inspiring, something gets people excited.
Because change without a destination is just chaos.
100%.
Yeah.
But it's not enough to just have that vision in your back pocket, right?
Right.
You got to share it.
Spread the word.
Exactly. That's step 4. Communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean really communicating clearly, consistently, through every channel you can think of.
No vague memos or cryptic emails.
No way.
Yeah.
People need to understand not just what's changing, but why it matters.
Okay, so we've got buy-in, we've got a plan, we've communicated it, now what?
Now we get our hands dirty. Step 5, empower action. Remove any obstacles that are in the way, give people the resources they need to succeed, and then step back.
Let them do their thing.
Exactly.
But you don't want people to lose steam.
Exactly. That's where step 6 comes in. Generate short-term wins.
I like the sound of that.
You celebrate those small victories.
Recognize the progress.
Yeah. Keeps the momentum going, shows people that all this effort is actually making a difference.
Everybody loves a win.
Who doesn't? But here's the thing. It's tempting to rest on your laurels after a few wins.
I can see that.
But you can't. Step 7 is all about consolidating those gains and producing even more change. It's about keeping your eye on the bigger picture.
No resting on your laurels, got it. What's the final step?
The last one's all about making it stick.
Okay, so it's not just about checking boxes.
Not at all.
It's got to become part of the company culture.
Exactly. Step 8,
Uh-huh.
make it stick. You're embedding these new behaviors, these new processes, this new way of thinking into the very DNA of your organization.
It's about making it the new normal. I like it.
Right.
Okay, so we've got these 8 steps, right? Both the classic and the dynamic models use them. But something tells me there's more to Kotter's approach than just a checklist. Am I right?
You are absolutely right. It's not just about the mechanics of change. Cotter understood that people are at the heart of every organization.
Of course.
So he's got these 4 additional
Well,
principles.
4 more. Lay it on me.
And they're all about tapping into the human side of things.
Oh, okay, interesting. Tell me more about that. So we've covered a ton about how to actually, do transformation.
We've got our 8 steps, the classic, the dynamic.
Right. And those 4 principles for tapping into, what was it, the human spark?
The human spark, exactly. But even with all that, most of these change efforts, they still crash and burn.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing, actually. Like we said, 2/3.
Around there, yeah.
Hmm.
It really shows you how tough this stuff is.
So what trips people up? Why do so many organizations hit a wall?
Well, one thing our Unit 2 document mentions is this lack of alignment. Like, if everyone's not on the same page
About what exactly?
about everything, the goals, the why behind it all, even just the how of making the change happen, if that's not crystal clear,
You're going to have bad time.
yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's like everyone's pulling in different directions.
They're trying to build that house with different blueprints, like we were saying.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's communication, or rather the lack of it.
Yeah, we talked about that before, though, how important it is to keep people in the loop.
Right. But it's not enough to just say stuff.
No.
You got to say it the right way.
Oh, I see. So it's not just what you communicate, but how you communicate it.
Exactly. You got to be empathetic, address people's concerns, build trust. If you don't,
People get suspicious. They resist.
and that's another big one, resistance to change. People don't like it. It's natural, even if it's a good change.
Totally. You're messing with their routine.
Their comfort zone.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore that resistance, though.
Shove it under the rug.
Yeah. It's going to come out eventually, and it's not going to be pretty.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It's going to pop up somewhere else.
Exactly. And lastly, and this is a big one, you can't forget about the human element.
We've said it like a million times on this deep dive. People.
Right. But organizations, they get so caught up in the processes and systems, they forget about the people.
And those are the ones who actually make it all happen.
Exactly. No matter how good your plan is, you need those people on board, bought in, excited about the change.
Engaged. Motivated.
That's the stuff.
Okay, so we've got our toolkit, right? We've got these frameworks, the pitfalls to avoid. What's the big takeaway here?
For me, it's that there's no magic bullet. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Every organization is different.
Totally. What works for one company might be a disaster for another.
Context is key, like we were saying before.
100%. You got to figure out what works best for your situation.
And be ready to adapt.
Always be adapting. Because things change. The plan's going to change. That's just the nature of the game.
Makes sense.
But honestly, the biggest takeaway, and our Unit 2 document kind of hints at this, it's that none of this works without the right leadership.
It all comes back to leadership.
It always does. Because at the end of the day, it's the leaders who set the tone, who create the vision, who inspire everyone to get on board with this crazy thing we call transformation.
That's a great point to end on. Leadership makes or breaks change. So to everyone listening, think about the kind of leader you want to be. Are you going to be the one clinging to the old ways?
Or the one who's brave enough to embrace change.
To guide their organization into the future. It's something to think about.
It is.
Well, this has been an awesome deep dive.
My pleasure.
Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.